Hi, it's Dark Shades again. This is part 2 of why we need significant others. Now, you can argue that you don't, but I'm going to argue that we do. Not because you need somebody to help you in the house, not because you need company, not because it's good to have somebody to help you with the finances. It's got nothing to do with that. Romantic love creates a physical drive very different from a sexual urge, compelling two people to yearn for one another for as long as it takes until they can be together. Sex is, when men talk about, sex, and women are saying, he only wants me for sex. Sex is the least important thing with regard to a man. When they're young, they have to prove themselves. But as a man matures, sex isn't all that important. What they crave is that romance, that nurturing, and they also crave that intimacy, the emotional intimacy. And when you think about all the songs that are made, about the people don't write songs about, well, some people do, but on the dance hall, but most people, they talk about they'll live for love, they'll die for love, they'll sing for love, they listen to love, they dance to love. It's all about love. And it's all about love because love is supposed to last. Love is supposed to mean something. So sex is a part of love, but it's only meaningful when two people are in love, believe it or not. Other than that, it's just an empty process. And why romance fades is because the honeymoon period is over and they move away from that intense feeling of romantic love to a sense of attachment. And then the deeper sense of calm ensues, and then they feel unity with that person. However, if that attachment is broken, they have a sense of loss, just like grief. So relationships, like I said before, it's not so much that people want to stay in destructive relationships. It's because they've formed an attachment. And some people say you have a spiritual attachment, if you are intimate with somebody, and it's not that easy to break. So you'll find sometimes, even though a relationship is destructive, you still have those thoughts and that yearning for another person because of that attachment. And like over the weekend, somebody was saying, when you're in a relationship, you're like a Mr. and Mrs. or you're like, people are always putting you two together. And if that breaks up, it's like there's a sense of loss. You're no longer, your identity was with that other person. When people write cards, they always write it to two of you. And then all of a sudden, when they invite people out, it's both of you, and then all of a sudden there's only one of you, and you have a sense of loss, and part of you is gone. And so that is what a lot of people crave. So couples don't fall out of love, they fall out of attachment, and that is when loss is felt. But not everyone experiences infatuation and romance. Sometimes it's not in people. Sometimes people are quite cold or distant, or regardless of the reasons. And I was watching a movie over the weekend, and this woman, I think it was French Kiss, or was it? No, my best friend's wedding. That was what it was, with Julia Roberts and Cameron Diaz. And what had happened was, Julia Roberts really liked her best friend, but when he tried to kiss her, she pushed him away. When he tried to hold her, she resisted. And he ended up going with Cameron Diaz, and he ended up marrying her. And one of the things he said to Julia Roberts, he said, I forget her name in the movie, but he said, Cameron doesn't push me away when I try to kiss her and when I try to hold her. And that's very, very deep. I mean, when I watch these movies, I know they're just movies, but sometimes there's an element of truth in a lot of those movies. And we're all wired for a romantic relationship. And it's like an emotional narcotic that makes us forget about everything else. And I don't know for many of you, but when I'm in love, I'm so happy. I know it's not always long lasting, but hey, you know, it still feels good. And you do yearn for that and you crave for that. And I guess when that kind of dissipates, you do kind of, you want it back. So you do what you can to rebuild that. But some people, they go into a state of complacency and they don't really feel as though there's any effort needed, and they don't know how important that romance is. But it is important. But, you know, going back to why you need a significant other, is that the longer people spend time alone because they cannot meet Mr. or Mrs. Right, the more likely they are to develop a sense of shyness, low self-esteem, self-consciousness, social withdrawal and anger. Because what happens is the longer you stay by your own, the more difficult you find it to interact. The more difficult you find, the more you think, oh well, I'm out of touch. The more you don't want to interact with people. The more insular you become and self-conscious. Oh, you know, will anybody like me? Am I still fanciable? You know, am I going to attract anybody? What are they going to want me for? Are they genuine? And you have all these doubts and fears. And, you know, you start imagining, oh, they're with somebody, they must have somebody, why are they? And then even if they haven't got anybody, then you must be saying, oh, why are they on their own? There must be something wrong with them. And you have this, barrage of doubts and fears. Why somebody who's probably quite eligible is not for you. And so you go back into yourself, back into your little corner and alone. Feeling lonely or living alone is very frightening, especially as you get older, because you start thinking, oh, supposing I have a traumatic experience or disabling experience, supposing I lose my job, supposing I have a terminal disease, supposing I fall down the stairs and I'm in the house by myself. Okay, supposing you've got tenants. I mean, some people say, oh, well, I've got tenants in the house. Oh, my kids are around. It's not the same thing. You need to know there's somebody who's got your back and somebody who cares for you and somebody you can be intimate with. And like I said, these little odd little flings that people have, they're not cutting it. They're not satisfying. And in fact, they're quite damaging, to be honest. So you have to be careful. Some people who live alone have died and not been found for weeks. We know that. We've heard it on the news. And because of this economic climate, many live with families. I'm reading this, but you can tell. But it doesn't negate the fact that not living with a significant other lends itself to well-being issues. I had to read that little paragraph there because I thought it was important. I know I blubbered a bit, but tell you something. Don't isolate yourself. Don't be afraid. So we get burnt a few times. Like me, I've been burnt 100 times. Well, not 100 times, but I haven't even been burnt. I tell you something. I love learning more about myself and finding and just the thought of getting closer to what I want or need. That is what motivates me. So no one's going to discourage me, and you know, I know my significant other is out there. Meanwhile, I build friendships, I have friends, and it's absolutely wonderful. And like, that's a good thing to do. You might not want a significant other, or you might be afraid to have a significant other. So build friendships. Just see people as platonic friends. And you never know where that will lead, but you've got to get out there, brothers and sisters. It's no point being in the house by yourself. You weren't built for that. And, you know, it ain't happening.